This is day 5 of a little series I started called Preaching Stories. Was going to go 30 days, but since 5 is the number of grace, I'm going to end it here. But this is about preaching stories. Preaching stories can put you ahead in the message. They can fill a spot in the message. They can set the crowd at ease in a message. And if you notice, most of the great preachers tell stories. And if you let me tell you, and I'd be completely honest, uh, one of the greatest storytellers, the late Bishop G.E. Patterson, listened to other preachers' stories. He could tell you when they preached it best. He knew most other preachers' pocket sermons. And then he knew how to use your story, and he put his little spin on it and take it to another place. The presiding Bishop Emeritus, Charles Edward Blake, preached a sermon at Temple Deliverance in the 90s. It may have not even been the late 90s. It could have been a little earlier. And he preached a sermon called Emotional Survival in a Crazy World. See, you got to study preachers. Instead of trying to wear your hat like your preacher wears his hat, having a matching coat, having matching glasses like your preachers, or being suited like your preacher, how about getting your preacher stories? So the Bishop Charles Edward Blake, the presiding Bishop Emeritus of the Church of God in Christ, had a story talking about Joseph. And Joseph was in a fix with his brothers in Genesis chapter 50, and they were thinking that Joseph was going to pay them back for the evil that they'd done. And Bishop Blake hit it like this, and he said Joseph went and had a thought, and he said, if he hadn't been a dreamer, they never would have sold me. If they had never sold me, I never could have met Potiphar. If I never met Potiphar, I never could have met Potiphar's wife. If I had never met Potiphar's wife, I would have ended up in prison. If I had never ended up in prison, I never would have met the baker and the butler. If I never met the baker and the butler, I would never met Pharaoh, and I wouldn't stand as second in command in Egypt. He preached that sermon then. So the late Bishop G.E. Patterson came back and preached, your day will come. He put his spin on the story. And then Bishop Blake came right back and even wrote a book called The Dreamers Are Coming. He preached the opening day of the new building, the new facility at Temple Deliverance. So most of the good preachers, they know stories. One of the greatest compliments I ever received from the late Bishop G.E. Patterson was the fact that I could discuss Gardner Taylor with him. Gardner Taylor wasn't Kojic, but he was one of his favorite preachers. And he said, Smith, you're a preacher's preacher. So sometimes you don't try to steal their look. Take their stories. And I'm the checker Fred at all the barbershops where I've ever been. So I got a little bit of charisma. Put you in your story. And all you got to say is the story is told. That story doesn't have to be a first-hand story all the time. It doesn't need to come from the gutter. But if it proves a point, it proves a principle, how about doing that? The late Bishop, no, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to use this one. Bishop Noel Jones once told a story of meeting a guy at a gym, and the guy was getting dressed, and he was getting dressed, getting out there, and he said the guy was cut from here to here. And he said, man, that's an awful scar. And the guy said, well, this is where I had open heart surgery. And then Bishop Jones came back and thought, he said, here I am, thinking the man had been cut to be killed, and the man was literally cut to be healed. Boy, you could use that story and kill a crowd. Okay, then there's, I think, past Dr. Frankie Ray uses this one at its apex about a preacher coming to town, and all a preacher coming to town to preach, and he set the city on fire, and people stopped buying drugs and stopped buying liquor, and the mob couldn't make their money, and the preacher was turning the city upside down. Dope dealers were becoming deacons, and prostitutes were becoming missionaries. So all of a sudden, the mob noticed, some of the crime syndicates noticed that their money wasn't the same, and they said, "What's the problem here?" And they said, what's that preacher? Since he's coming to town, our money has gone down. So they put a hit on the preacher. So they were waiting for the preacher to come to his revival meeting one night, and they put an assignment, paid the money, paid the person to carry out the work. The preacher did the revival, and nothing came of it. So one day the preacher had a guy knock at his door. And he said, "What are you doing here?" They said, "Well, man, I was paid to take you out. They paid me to kill you." He said, "But I couldn't kill you because of those two big old guys that were with you on the stage." And he said, "What?" He said, "There was no one with me on the stage." "Yes, there were two real big old guys." And then he said he realized that it was goodness and mercy on his side. You can take that one. I may have pulled it another way that Dr. Ray uses it so good, but you can work with that one. My own bishop, the Bishop Robert E. Barber, is a great storyteller. He passes on stories. He studies stories. He doesn't even know that I'm studying stories. But he has a story about a little boy that played in the neighborhood. And he played and played and played, and it got so late, and the little boy got lost. And then it just played, and he couldn't find his way home. So the police got him. They took him to the police station. They asked him his mother's name. He couldn't come up with that. He asked him what street he lived on. He couldn't come up with that. He couldn't tell anything about him. So they're just at their wits' end. And then they said, "Well, can you tell us something near you?" And he said, "No." He said, "Well, their church near you." He said, "Yes, there's a big old church with a great big old steeple, with a great big old cross." And he said, "If you can get me to the cross, I can find my way home." Now, Bishop Barber will tell that one to a great degree and might even put a whoopee right in on that story. So look, preachers use stories. Even the best speakers in the world outside of this, they know the power of stories. Look at your own personal experiences. There are times you can share stories from your personal experiences. Your personal experiences are chock full of stories that might put feet to the gospel, preach Steve, that might put arms and hands and make it practical and make it relevant. And I think we're all blessed. Now, this is the end of my series. I'm not going to go 30 days, but this is Preaching Stories, Day 5. Make the story yours. Tell it with passion. Tell it with power. Just tell it. And the story, it may not bring all the point home, but people always look for living, walking, talking, breathing examples, or examples that might not be breathing, but adds to your gospel point. Be blessed.